Alone at the wedding. Billionaire CEO's amazing transformation. After strangers' touching whisper, Jesse Whitman, billionaire CEO, stood alone at his estranged sister's wedding. The brisk autumn air was laden with the scent of fallen leaves, and vibrant colors danced around him like whispers of a life he had left behind. Guests busted with laughter, joy bouncing around like confetti, but Jesse felt like a specter, a businessman marooned in a sea of family warmth and connection he had sacrificed for the sake of his empire. His heart hardened, concealed behind power suits and cold ambition. It ached like a ghost seeking presence. In the gleam of the reception, he watched them, a parade of toasts and affection, each word piercing deeper than the last. Every laugh from someone else felt like a reminder of the love he had cast aside in pursuit of something he wasn't even sure he still wanted. The echoes of childhood played in his mind, days filled with backyard games, anchored by laughter and family. Yet those memories were shrouded in a fog of neglect. The ruthlessness of his climb to the top bore a weight heavier than any financial gain. He had traded siblings for spreadsheets, love for board meetings, and now he was confronted by the gaping chasm of disconnection. A gentle voice threaded through the cacophony, pulling him from his thoughts. An elderly woman approached, her face lined with joy and sorrow intertwined. "You know, my boy," she whispered, her words threading through the icy armor around his heart. "Love lost can be found again, if you just reach out." Her voice, warm and wise, was a reminder of his own garden, once vibrant, now barren. His pulse quickened as she spoke of regrets. He recognized himself in her tale of lost opportunities, of family ties severed and could-have-beens. Yet even as the warmth of nostalgia washed over him, a suffocating dread gripped his insides. How had he become someone to isolate himself? The success that paid his bills had robbed him of the very essence that fed the soul. Money could never replace the laughter shared over holiday meals or the comfort of knowing he belonged. The wedding cake gleamed, untouched, a metaphor for the sweetness of what he had neglected. As the couple exchanged vows, Jesse's stomach knotted painfully. Torn between a primal urge to reconnect and the familiar retreat into solitude, he found himself suspended in a wave of regret. Shadows loomed over him, thickening with every joyous cheer. The woman's gentle prodding unfurled a question that haunted him. Could he bridge the vast divide his choices had woven? The strength of his business acumen felt laughably trivial in the face of human connection. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jesse stood on the precipice of action, heart racing as he fought against the tide of decision. The joyous celebration swirled around him, unaware of the internal tempest he battled. He was a man adrift, with the realization that his wealth meant nothing if it meant he faced life devoid of affection and familial ties. Could he become the brother she needed? Or would he remain a stranger within his own skin, haunted by the specter of his own dereliction? Just then, the woman touched his arm again. "What will it take for you to come home?" The question hung in the air like a suspended breath, its weight poised to tip the balance of his life forever. Jesse's pulse quickened as the question echoed in his mind like a drumbeat. The elderly woman's gaze was direct, penetrating through his carefully constructed barriers. She had made him confront a truth he'd buried deep within, a gnawing feeling that he had lost not just his sister, but a part of himself in the pursuit of success. The vibrant colors of the celebration blurred around him, transforming into a muted canvas of regret and longing. He couldn't shake the idea of reaching out, but the thought of doing so felt like an enormous leap into an abyss. What if she rejected him? What if he was too late? That moment triggered something within him, a flicker of determination amidst the uncertainty. He had thrived in the world of business, navigating mergers and acquisitions with the confidence of a general on the battlefield. Yet here, amidst the laughter and joy of family, he felt like an inexperienced novice. "This isn't just about you," Jesse muttered to himself, clenching his jaw. "What good is it to conquer an empire of solitude?" The voice of the woman echoed in him, urging him to visualize what coming home might look like. Memories surfaced like waves on the shore, each one reminding him of the small moments he had taken for granted. the spontaneous laughter at family gatherings, and the warmth of hugs that felt like armor. Suddenly, he spotted his sister across the room, radiant, laughing with her friends. A flood of shame washed over him. Snippets of their childhood flashed before him, their shared dreams, the way she looked at him with admiration. Had he ever truly appreciated her? Taking in a deep breath, he felt conviction rise. He needed to confront his past. The thought alone ignited a familiar tension in his gut, but this time, it tempered instead of paralyzed him. With every step toward her, the weight of regret began lifting, replaced by a strange sense of possibility. "Excuse me," Jesse said, squeezing through a group of jubilant guests. Each word felt foreign to his lips, but the pull of connection urged him on. The closer he got, the more he could hear her laughter, harmonizing with a bass undercurrent of nostalgia and affection, a song he had forgotten he loved. When he finally reached his sister, she turned to him, her expression shifting from joy to surprise, her eyes flaring wide. "Jesse?" Her voice wavered slightly, reflecting disbelief. He opened his mouth to speak, but the old defenses threatened to rise again. This was his sister, the one he had let down so many times. Words seemed inadequate, floundering against the gravity of their shared history. Then, steeling himself, he decided to strip away the veneer of the successful businessman he had built. "I'm so sorry," he finally said, his voice steadying. "I've been an idiot. I've let work consume me, and I've missed you, missed everything. I want to come home." Doubt creased her brow, but something softened in her expression, an undeniable flicker of hope. Yet there was a longer path ahead. Jesse could see that forgiveness wouldn't come easily. It was a journey, not just a statement. As she looked into his eyes, he realized the vastness of change required not just reckoning with his past, but also a commitment to a new path forward. The struggle for connection would be arduous, but essential. Just then, a loud cheer erupted from the dance floor, pulling their attention away momentarily. He was struck with an almost paralyzing revelation. Was he even capable of rebuilding those bonds? His sister's hand slipped into his, anchoring him in this pivotal moment. "Let's talk," she suggested tentatively, dropping her gaze to their intertwined fingers, signaling a tentative bridge. He felt the warmth of her acceptance while a distant part of his mind still wrestled with trepidation. Familiar voices began to cascade around them again, yet eerily distant. In that chaos, he could almost hear the heartbeats of what lay ahead, a life filled with complexity, challenges, and ultimately, the possibility of rebirth. But Jesse wondered, would every step toward redemption forever remind him of what he had lost? He opened his mouth to share his concerns and aspirations, but just as he began to verbalize, the music paused, the room fell silent. Every head turned toward them, and Jesse felt the weight of the crowd's expectations like a spotlight illuminating his character. What had he truly stepped into when he chose to engage with his sister? This was only the beginning, and he could feel the next challenge lurking just beyond the horizon of this newfound connection. Would he face the music and embrace it all, or would old habits retreat him back to solitude? Jesse's heart raced, the silence amplifying the vulnerability that unfurled within him. All eyes were upon him, an audience to his unraveling. The air hung thick with unspoken narratives, and the involuntary spotlight forced him to confront the reality he'd so meticulously crafted in isolation. He glanced at his sister, who was scanning the room, uncertainty etched across her face. Awareness hit him with the force of a wave. This was not just a personal reckoning, it was about rebuilding trust, restoring a bond that had faded through neglect. Losing himself in business was easier than admitting he had fractured his family ties. "Why, Jesse? Why now?" Her voice broke through the silence, tinged with a mix of hurt and hope. The sincerity in her tone cracked open the door to the painful dialogue that lay ahead. "I don't have all the answers," he admitted, the honesty raw in his throat. "I thought I could find fulfillment in numbers, in deals, in success. But I was wrong." Those words hung heavy, but they bore the weight of truth. He took a step closer, the subtle shift in physical space mirroring his emotional intention to bridge the chasm between them. "I let my ambition get in the way of something so precious. I thought losing myself in work would fill the void. Instead, I just emptied everything else around me." She met his gaze, her expression resilient yet tender, clearly wrestling with layers of emotions. This was new, this confrontation. Jesse had never been skilled in vulnerability. It felt like navigating through uncharted territory, both exhilarating and frightening. Take your time, Jesse, but understand this. Family isn't built on success. It lives in every memory we shared. Her voice softened, revealing both the pain of the past and the unconditional nature of brotherly love. Then let's start rebuilding, he suggested, a sliver of hope sparking within him. I'm here, willing to do whatever it takes. Though he felt far from ready, the urgency in his tone echoed the desire to transform his regret into action. It was time to confront the disconnection head-on, to dismantle the barriers he had fortified around his heart. They walked to a quieter corner, away from prying eyes, but still enveloped by the vibrancy of the celebration. It was surreal. The sounds were now a backdrop, a rhythm accompanying a new pivotal moment in his life. He needed to temper his ambitious nature with genuine patience and empathy, the true currency of relationships. I want to learn about you again, he said earnestly. What do you dream about? What makes you happy? Such questions felt foreign yet necessary, an attempt to unearth layers of his sister he had neglected for so long. I've always loved painting, she revealed, her voice barely above a whisper, an intimacy blooming in the quiet. But I haven't touched a brush in years. Life got in the way. Then let's paint together, he proposed with a mirthful tone, sensing that the act of participating in her joy would become a lifeline for both. Jesse realized that he didn't just want her to forgive him, he wanted to invest in her happiness, to be part of not just her past, but her present and future. As laughter swirled around them once more, he noticed the gentle shift in her demeanor. Laughter might once have felt like a distant echo, but now it became a bridge to newfound connection. Jesse felt a resolve settling in his chest, a decision that reflected an understanding that was as profound as it was simple. He couldn't undo the past, but he could shape a future together, one step at a time. Yet the unexpected tug of fear persisted. What if trying to reconnect only reminded her of the hurt? What if he stumbled into old patterns? He braced himself, knowing his commitment to change would be tested repeatedly. Their conversation deepened, revealing a mutual thirst for understanding, for sharing dreams long forgotten. But amid the rebuilding, doubt slithered in, a familiar companion whispering hesitations in his mind. Would he genuinely be able to balance ambition and family? Just as they began to discuss plans for a painting session, a distant voice called out, breaking their moment. A figure emerged from the crowd, one that sent a shiver down his spine, a specter of his past that could shatter the delicate bond he was trying to forge. Who was approaching, and what would their presence mean for the path he and his sister were just beginning to navigate? Jesse's stomach twisted, his heart pounding not just from the emotion of the evening, but from the cold recognition of the figure approaching. The atmosphere, once light and buoyant, now felt heavy with impending confrontation. The moment his eyes locked onto the familiar face, dread seeped into his resolve. "Jesse, there you are!" The voice was both familiar and insistent, slicing through the momentum he had been building with his sister. It was Ethan, an old colleague and rival from his corporate days, a presence he had desperately hoped to leave behind. "Ethan," Jesse managed, his voice steadier than he felt. The last thing he wanted was to draw more attention to the fragile connection that had just begun to mend. His gaze flickered to his sister, anxiety etched on her face as if she could feel the shift in energy. Ethan was a man built on the foundation of success, brash and unapologetically ambitious. Jesse had once admired him, but now that admiration felt hollow, tainted by the shallow values they had both clung to. "I didn't expect to see you here," Ethan continued, an unsettling smile plastered across his face. "Heard you've been doing really well, expanding your business. Congratulations." "Thanks," Jesse replied, the words strangled in his throat. He felt the weight of expectation shift from joy to scrutiny. This was the man who personified everything Jesse had vowed to escape. The juxtaposition of their lives felt like a spotlight, shining on the choices Jesse had made and the time he had lost. "Still playing it safe, I see," Ethan quipped, his tone dipped in condescension. "You'll never really make waves if you keep dodging opportunities for real growth. Are you still running in circles, or have you finally decided to elevate your game?" Every word gnawed at Jesse's resolve, challenging the fragile confidence that had begun to repair his relationship with his sister. Here stood the embodiment of past ambitions that had driven him into isolation, and now he was forced to confront this reality. "I'm pursuing a different path now," Jesse stated, attempting to assert his newfound direction. It was a risk to even acknowledge that he was changing, and yet it felt necessary. "What, playing house with your sister? You think that's going to make you whole?" Ethan's laughter bubbled with disdain, but Jesse saw something more in it, an unsettling reflection of his own insecurities. He wondered, was Ethan right? Could mending familial ties truly be enough after the years he dedicated to pursuits deemed greater? "It's not about that," Jesse said, the edge in his tone sharpening as his sister stepped closer, clearly uncomfortable with the tension. "It's about finding what matters, learning what I've neglected." Ethan's expression turned serious, though his posture remained predatory. "You've always been good at spinning narratives. Keep telling yourself that. But the real world doesn't care about your sentimental journey, this moment you're trying to build. It's just another distraction." Each derisive word cut deeper than the last. The echoes of doubt began to take root in Jesse's mind, warping his newly discovered confidence. He glanced at his sister, desperate for reassurance, but her uncertainty mirrored his. "Family is everything," Jesse asserted, fighting to maintain his voice above the rising tide of fear. "I don't need your approval to know what's important." Ethan smirked, stepping back into his confident demeanor. "We'll see how long that lasts," he replied, then turned, leaving a chill in the air. The moment hung precariously, teetering on the brink of what could become a life-altering decision. Turning back to his sister, Jesse felt the weight of the moment press heavily upon him. Could he truly balance the weight of ambition and the warmth of family? The question unfolded into 1,000 possibilities, each one a potential stumbling block on the path of rediscovery. "I'm sorry you had to see that," Jesse said, his voice breaking slightly as he attempted to center himself. He expected frustration or resignation from her, but instead, she reached out, her small hand covering his. "It's okay, Jesse," she reassured him, her gaze steadying his wavering confidence. "You're not alone in this anymore." But even in the sanctuary of her words, uncertainty lingered. The presence of Ethan, and the unsettling truth of his own doubts, threatened to unravel everything he had begun to rebuild. How could he prove to himself that he was worthy of this transformation? "Let's focus on our painting session then," he suggested, a smidge of determination igniting within him. It was a distraction, yes, but also a chance for genuine connection. Yet as they ventured away, a glimmer of an old deal entered the back of Jesse's mind, a deal that had once promised him everything, but had robbed him of the very essence of life. Would Ethan surface again, dragging Jesse back into a world he thought he had left behind? The evening was still young, and the echoes of past choices loomed heavily. He steeled himself, feeling the ground shift underfoot. The reckoning was far from over. The question remained, would he act upon the challenge laid before him, or would he succumb once again to the shadow of his past? Jesse clenched his fists as he and his sister settled into their makeshift art station, the easels wobbling slightly under the weight of their canvas. Each breath he took felt heavy, laced with the remnants of Ethan's derision. His heart raced, not merely from the confrontation, but from a different kind of urgency, a call to evolve beyond the version of himself that had once chased hollow ambitions. "Okay," he said, attempting to redirect his energy. "Let's paint something. Something vibrant." His words came out with more fervor than he intended, as if the very act of creation could purge the tension that tightened around his throat. His sister mixed colors, while he stood motionless, staring at the blank canvas. It was deceptively intimidating, just like the past he was grappling with. Just like Ethan's words, echoing in his mind, demanding action, demanding validation. He picked up a brush, its wooden handle both comforting and foreign. "What's bothering you?" she asked, her tone gentle but probing. She scrutinized him even while she circled the brush in a swirl of blues and greens. The question hovered in the air, thick with expectation. Should he divulge everything? The unease, the confrontation, the questioning of his choices? But Jesse hesitated, unsure of how much of himself he was ready to share. "It's just—" "It was Ethan," he finally replied, setting the brush down as if it had burned him. "He always knows how to push your buttons, huh?" she remarked, attention now engaged with his demeanor. Jesse nodded, unwilling to admit just how much Ethan's presence unsettled him. "He's right in a way. I feel like I'm trying to grow roots where I used to fly, but am I really making the right choice?" His sister paused mid-stroke, contemplating his admission. "Jesse, change doesn't mean abandoning your past. It's about weaving in the lessons you've learned. You're not playing house, you're building a life." Her voice held an undeniable steadiness, reminding him of the foundation they shared, a bond that had withstood years of distance. Building a life. Jesse murmured, staring once more at the empty canvas. But now he felt the weight of potential rather than regret. He couldn't just bow to Ethan's taunts. There was power in the choices he had begun to make, and strange as it felt, it might very well be time to assert this newly coined ambition, not in reckless defiance, but in determined action. With newfound vigor, he dipped the brush into bold crimson, spreading it across the canvas. It felt cathartic, almost rebellious. Each stroke was a declaration, an affirmation of his intentions to claim ownership instead of cowering under judgments. He could paint the tapestry of his life, to include both family and ambition, interlinking the love he had rediscovered with the audacity to dream. "Wow, look at you go!" she beamed, watching the vibrant colors collide and blend. The joy in her voice injected energy into him. Maybe this was the essence of what he had missed, the creative expression rather than the rigid confines of the corporate path. As they painted in sync, an idea began to sprout within him. A notion that perhaps he could confront his anxieties head-on, make calculated choices, and craft opportunities that blended his personal and professional aspirations rather than confining them to isolated corners. But even as this realization sparked a flame, doubt lingered in the background. Would Ethan's criticisms continue to haunt him? Surely he wouldn't slink back into silence every time someone questioned his choices. "Jess, what's going on in there?" his sister asked, watching him stall in thought. "Just thinking about that deal I turned down to join Ethan," he said, while trying to maintain focus on the painting. But the nagging, unfinished business loomed in his mind like an old ghost. It had been such a safe option, so predictable. "Maybe I should reconsider." "No," she reacted sharply, startling him. "You've turned your back on that world for a reason. Don't let him draw you into his toxicity. Remember, this journey is about what you want, what matters to you." Her words crystallized the truth. He couldn't allow himself to be drawn back into the past, especially when the flames of his current choices were igniting into something greater. But what if a crossroads was approaching again, one that he wouldn't be able to avoid forever? As he glanced at the scene taking shape on the canvas, Jesse felt an inkling of courage swell within him. He would confront Ethan, not out of resentment but from a place of peace and conviction. Tonight wasn't the end, it was simply the beginning of his self-assertion. When he finally broke the silence, his voice steadied, determination infusing each word. "I need to talk to Ethan again." Her eyes widened with surprise, mixed with concern. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Jesse confirmed, meeting her gaze with newfound assurance. "It's time to confront my past. It's time to redefine my future." The moment crackled with intensity as he envisioned how that encounter might play out. A reckoning loomed close, one that could reshape everything. But would he emerge validated, or would he find himself ensnared once more? The echoes of doubt wrestled with burgeoning courage as they danced tantalizingly before him. With each pulsating beat in Jesse's chest, he felt the powerful surge of resolve awaken within him. The paintbrush hovered above the canvas as he embarked on a dual journey, one of artistic expression and a deeper recognition of his existing fears. He had painted bold strokes of crimson and vibrant yellows, but the task lying ahead, confronting Ethan, loomed larger than any canvas could bear. His sister finished her work, and Jesse watched her paint with an absorbed focus. A quiet intensity overlaid her strokes, an understanding that beauty was formed under layers of tension and uncertainty. He envied her ability to channel emotion seamlessly into creation. It sparked an idea. Perhaps he could use that approach in his conversation with Ethan. Instead of attacking, he could reveal, expose the vulnerabilities that flared within. "Do you remember the way we used to bend our thoughts into new shapes while we painted?" he asked his sister, the words flowing from him like the colors across the canvas. "Of course. It's how we dealt with everything, isn't it? Art has always been our refuge," she replied, her eyes distant but knowing. Jesse felt a flicker of possibility in that statement. Confrontation didn't have to mean a clash. It could become a nuanced negotiation of understanding. He picked up the brush again, this time applying rhythmic strokes of blue, a symbol of the clarity he hoped to find. He realized that his past decisions had not just defined him, they had carved out pathways of resentment and paralysis. "What if I shift my focus on the growth I've experienced rather than the fear of judgment?" he pondered aloud, connecting each thought to the vibrant colors unfolding before him. "Exactly," she exclaimed, eyes lighting up. "Each hue, every detail represents a part of you. And by confronting Ethan, you're not backtracking. You're honoring who you've become. You're ready to show him your new palette." Feeling the weight of her words, Jesse pushed back the doubts, claiming the space around him, a revelation that could shift his perspective toward Ethan from animosity to clarity. Even if their past had been rife with confrontation, there was opportunity here to grow beyond it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he prepared himself mentally. Each brushstroke was grounding him, entwining creativity and life choices. The canvas was transforming from a reflection of chaos to a visual testament of clarity, just like he aspired to create in his conversation with Ethan. What if it doesn't go well? He mused, the doubt surfacing again just as it always had after letting his fears creep in. Then you learn. You unleash the truth instead of hiding, his sister countered, finalizing her painting with swift, confident moves. Her fierce determination stoked the flames of his courage. Perhaps the time had come to not merely confront, but to articulate the lessons he carried, forcing Ethan to reckon with not only his past denigrations, but the evidence of Jesse's change. Okay, he breathed, bracing himself. I can do this. As he stepped back from the canvas, finally able to appreciate the image before him, he understood a new layer of his development. Each color was a whisper of the journey, affirming that he had not merely retreated, but diversified, learned, and expanded into something profound. The dawn of his new self awaited. The confrontation with Ethan would not simply be an attempt at reconciliation, it was an assertion of his evolution. And yet, the ghost of uncertainty lingered. What truths would surface during this encounter? Would Ethan accept the person he had become, or would he still see only the boy who had once strived for his approval? Are you ready for whatever comes next? His sister asked, as she stepped back. Jesse focused on his reflection in the paint-slicked surface. More than ever, the night held a weight heavier than expectation, but amidst the uncertainty, something sparked. He could be the architect of his narrative, not a mere puppet in Ethan's story. Every second brought him closer to that moment where he would either reclaim his power or be jolted back into the past he had fought to escape. But as he steeled himself for the inevitable confrontation with his past, one question lingered in the air. Would he emerge transformed, or would he find himself rendered powerless once more? Jesse stood at the edge of the world he had known. A flickering streetlight overhead cast shadows that danced on the cobblestones below as he approached the cafe where he was to meet Ethan. Each step resonated like a drumbeat, echoing the weight of every unresolved moment between them. He could feel his heart racing, but this time there was an undercurrent of purpose threading through the anxiety. Earlier that day, he had sketched out the confrontation in his mind, a conceptual map that charted the waters he had to navigate. His thoughts spiraled around the power dynamics, the history they shared, and most crucially, what he had to say. This wasn't just about old grievances, it was a declaration of who he had become. He needed to wear his transformation like armor, ready to address vulnerabilities as strengths, to shift from defensiveness to openness. Arriving at the cafe, Jesse scanned the room, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with sweet pastries enveloping him in a false sense of comfort. Ethan sat at a corner table, his posture casual yet somehow exuding authority. He was still the same compelling figure who had loomed so large in Jesse's youth. People had always gravitated towards him. But now, Jesse felt a distinct difference. For the first time in years, he didn't just see a rival, he saw a peer. "Hey," Ethan greeted, his voice laced with an ease that Jesse struggled to mirror. "Hey," Jesse replied, settling into the seat opposite. The moment felt charged, like the calm before a storm that both terrified and thrilled him. "What's up?" Ethan's tone was nonchalant, but Jesse could see curiosity flicker in his eyes. It stirred an urgency inside him, a need to seize the moment before it slipped away. Jesse inhaled deeply, remembering the radiant colors from his canvas, the vulnerabilities he was about to reveal. "I wanted to talk about us, about our past." Ethan leaned back, arms crossed, an amused smile playing on his lips. "Is there a problem?" The question struck him like a blow, raw and unguarded. Yes, there had always been a problem. Jesse felt his resolve wobble, but he steadied himself, refusing to falter before this familiar adversary. "It's not about blame, it's about understanding how our choices shaped us." Ethan's expression shifted, interest peaked. "What brought this on?" "That honestly took me years to process," Jesse began, his voice trembling but resolute. "You were always the benchmark. I wanted your approval, but in seeking it, I lost sight of myself." He dared to meet Ethan's gaze, a moment of intimacy suspended in verbal challenge. "I let the pressure skew my vision." Ethan studied him, and for a heartbeat, Jesse questioned the legitimacy of his emotions. The memories flooded in, times when their friendship had eclipsed into rivalry, each jab deepening his worthlessness. But he pushed forward. "I have embraced my flaws, transformed my challenges into art. I'm not the kid who needed your validation anymore." The silence stretched between them, electric with unspoken judgments and shared histories. He anticipated the dismissal, the laugh of derision that had once accompanied his vulnerability. Yet, as he sat there, Jesse realized he no longer needed Ethan to accept him. He was standing firm in his truth, painting a new narrative where he was no longer defined by others. Incredibly, Ethan's smile dimmed, replaced by a thoughtful crease in his brow. "I didn't know you felt that way." There was surprise in his tone, and the admission hung in the air like an unturned tide. Jesse felt a surge of strength. "It's time we stopped letting the past dictate our reality." Ethan's silence was heavy, laden with potential consequences. The conversation felt like a bridge stretching toward uncharted territory, uncertain, yet inviting. Would this be the moment they broke free from cycles of resentment? And then, the unexpected arose, a flicker of recognition passed between them. Perhaps they could reforge their dynamic as equals, liberating each other from the chains of expectation set long ago. But the swirling emotions left doubts lingering, eager to surface. The question pierced through Jesse's certainty as he prepared to delve deeper. Were they ready to face what lay beneath? As tension mounted, he braced for a shifting of allegiances. The confrontation was just beginning. Jesse felt the weight of silence pressing on him as he awaited Ethan's response. The air crackled with tension, thick enough to slice. Each moment stretched into infinity, teasing the very edges of his resolve. Had he gone too far? Was challenging the familiar patterns worthwhile? Or was he setting himself up for disappointment? Ethan shifted in his seat, a flicker of conflict dancing across his face. For years Jesse had feared this moment, the confrontation that might unearth a multitude of buried grievances. Today, however, that fear had transformed. An ember of determination flared within him, fueled by the realization that they were at a crossroads, not just as friends, but as individuals who had each navigated their own labyrinthine journeys. "Look," Ethan finally said, his tone lower, more contemplative. "I think I've played a part in this dynamic too. I never meant for it to become this." His admission cracked through the facade of their old animosity, unveiling a vulnerability Jesse had not expected. "Then let's redefine it," Jesse urged, eager to grasp this shift, like a hand reaching for a lifeline. Ethan met his gaze, a blending of curiosity and wariness. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Jesse continued, each carefully chosen word layered with intent, "we have the chance to acknowledge our shared past without letting it dictate our future. Why not create something new?" The prospect hung in the air between them, luminous yet temperamental. Jesse recognized that this was more than a mere reconfiguration of their relationship. It was about embracing wholeness. Was he truly ready to strip away the walls, to join forces instead of fighting against one another? "What good will that do?" Ethan asked, skepticism creeping back into his voice. "It can free us," Jesse replied, urgently. "For too long, I let your standards shape my self-worth, and I believe, I can't be the only one here who feels the pressure of expectations." Ethan's brow furrowed slightly, and there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Recognition? Regret? Jesse couldn't tell. Nonetheless, it ignited an invitation for further exploration. "I've poured so much of myself into my work because I thought I had to. I thought success would fill the void," Ethan admitted, his voice softening. "But it hasn't. It's just a smokescreen." Jesse felt the churning response deep within. Here they were, two men standing atop the battleground where envy had once thrived, now exposed, raw, yet compellingly human. Somewhere in the recesses, the idea of collaboration had begun to take root. "Then let's support each other," Jesse offered, feeling the heat of a newfound courage. "Let's reject the idea that we have to compete. There's so much potential in unity." Ethan leaned forward, the transition palpable. This wasn't about confrontation anymore. It was an exploration of shared vulnerabilities and realized strengths. "What if we fail at this?" he inquired, searching. Jesse's heart raced, yet he felt an unexpected calm settle over him. "What if we don't? How would we ever know unless we take that step?" The cafe buzzed around them, momentarily forgotten, as they stared into the depths of possibilities their words illuminated. The boundaries that had once divided them softened. Something larger beckoned, a partnership forged not in rivalry but in mutual respect and understanding. But as Jesse clutched onto this fragile hope, Joaquin entered the cafe, eyeing them curiously. He was a key figure from their past, one whose arrival could either shatter their tentative bond or reveal deeper layers of understanding. Jesse's stomach knotted. The unresolved past was about to intrude on their moment of clarity. Would Joaquin's presence smother their newfound alliance? Or would it force both men to entirely reassess who they could be when they finally embraced their authentically transformed selves? The shift beneath Jesse's feet felt like a landslide awaiting to unfold. What secrets had Joaquin brought with him? Jesse felt his heart thunder in his chest as Joaquin approached their table. The well-structured walls that had begun to rise between him and Ethan wavered under the weight of impending confrontation. Jesse's instincts screamed at him to retreat into defensiveness, an ingrained reaction from years of rivalry and hurt. But today was different. He had dared to confront the past despite its looming specter, and he wasn't about to let it steal the moment. "Mind if I join you?" Joaquin's voice sliced through the tension. His presence heralded a flood of memories, conversations drenched in both camaraderie and hostility that surged victoriously through Jesse's mind. He recognized Joaquin's ability to shift the atmosphere, to command a room simply by existing in it. "Actually, we were just—" Jesse started, but Ethan cut in. "Sure, Joaquin, what brings you here?" The lightness in Ethan's tone was disarming, and it irked Jesse slightly. Hadn't they just started to unearth deeper truths between them? Joaquin glanced at Jesse, then back to Ethan, a smirk playing on his lips. "Just grabbing some caffeine, but I sensed some serious energy radiating from this corner of the cafe. I had to see what the buzz was about." Feeling the weight of Joaquin's gaze on him, Jesse leaned forward slightly, conscious of the steadiness of his breath. "We're actually talking about moving forward, about growing past our disagreements." "Disagreements?" Joaquin echoed, his eyes glimmering with mock curiosity. "That's one way to describe it. Any chance we could talk about the small matters, like who ruined whose career along the way?" A chill ran through Jesse, and he fought against the urge to recoil. Here it was, the moment he had feared. The past threatened to come crashing down, dismantling the fragile structure of understanding he had started to build with Ethan. Ethan interrupted, maintaining his careful grip on the situation. "We could focus on how we can all benefit from each other's strengths moving forward." A determined fire ignited in Ethan's eyes, and for a moment, Jesse realized they were both in this together, amplified by a common resolve. "What strengths?" Joaquin shot back, crossing his arms, the challenge evident. "The last time I checked, you two were still second-guessing yourselves. Are you really ready to talk about potential?" In that moment, a revelation ignited in Jesse's mind, its flames fueled by Joaquin's skepticism. That doubt could either stall their development or act as a catalyst. Jesse leaned back, gathering his thoughts. This was a test, not merely of his resolve, but a chance to assert his newfound belief in collaboration rather than competition. "Absolutely. In fact, I think if you really took a look, you might find that our past doesn't dictate our future. We all have something to gain by blending our experiences." The directness of his words surprised even Jesse, emerging from depths he hadn't previously acknowledged. Joaquin's brow furrowed in genuine surprise. "Is that what this is? A group therapy session about feeling warm and fuzzy? Because I'm not sold." "We don't need you to be sold, Joaquin," Ethan interjected, his voice rising slightly. "We need you to understand. This is about learning from the past, not reliving it. Maybe it's time we all realize the future isn't a competition." The tension clung heavily, an invisible wall forming around them despite their shared table. Jesse felt the urge to shrink away, but that spark of determination within him flared again. The past was significant, yes, but it could also be curtailed, managed. When he opened his mouth to speak again, Jesse was caught off guard by Joaquin's reaction. The competitive gleam in his eyes dulled momentarily, revealing an undercurrent of curiosity. "Interesting perspective," Joaquin conceded, the corner of his mouth quirked upward. "But can you really handle the truth of how messy things can get when you dig into the past?" Jesse's throat tightened, caught between the lures of fear and the anticipation of growth. The answer was right there, begging to be forged even in the face of uncertainty. "Yes, we can take that risk." The words hung in the air, crystalline yet volatile with possibility. As Jesse felt the moment stretch, Everything hung on the precipice of revelation. The past could either chain them to their previous failures or free them for something greater. A knock in the cafe signaled a new arrival, and Jesse's heart sank as he recognized the figure stepping through the door. Destiny was about to throw another curveball into their already complicated equation. Would it finally tip the scales toward unity, or deepen the fractures that still ran dormant within them? Jesse's heart raced as he recognized the figure entering the cafe. It was Clara, an acquaintance from his past who had once been a vital part of both his personal life and the professional sphere he was striving to escape. She commanded attention effortlessly, her presence illuminating the dimly lit room. Jesse's thoughts spiraled. Would she reveal cherished memories? Or perhaps her appearance would incite old rivalries anew? "Jesse! Ethan!" Clara exclaimed, disbelief illuminating her features as she approached their table. "What are you two doing together?" "Just talking," Jesse replied, choosing his words carefully. He could feel Ethan's gaze flicker between him and Clara, the tension simmering within the atmosphere intensifying. "Talking? About what? How to ruin your lives further? Because that's what it looks like from the outside," Clara teased, though a hint of concern underlined her words. It was a moment of vulnerability that Jesse had not anticipated. "Actually, we're discussing how to move forward, how to grow from the past," he said, the voice steadying in his throat, defying the familiar urge to retreat. He was no longer prepared to be a captive of adverse narratives. "Forward, huh? Sounds too good to be true." Clara leaned on the table, her emerald eyes keenly assessing their demeanor. "You two aren't known for your teamwork, if I remember correctly." The gravity of her gaze struck a chord. She was right, of course. They had been adversaries, locked in a relentless pursuit of dominance and validation, using their shared history as fuel for competition. But now, as memories played in his mind, Jesse felt the shifting tides of self-assertion rising within him. "Things are different now," he replied, finding courage in his new resolution. "We're acknowledging how our past has shaped us. It's finally time to stop using it as an excuse." The words felt like armor, reinforcing his conviction. "Maybe what you need," Clara said with a knowing smile, "is a good dose of truth, because moving forward means really understanding where you've been." Jesse's heart jolted as he recalled the moments of turbulence and joy, each painting an intricate tapestry of who he had become. Clara's intervention could be a catalyst. Rather than resist the reflections of their histories, they could confront them together. But before he could navigate through the whirlwind of thoughts, Ethan spoke up. "We're not rejecting the past, we're reinterpreting it. It doesn't have to define our future." He glanced from Clara to Jesse, revealing an unexpected alliance, a shared aspiration teetering on the edge of revelation. The corner of Clara's mouth twitched, her skepticism wavering momentarily. "Well, that's refreshing. But how do you ensure you won't revert to old habits?" Jesse leaned forward, an idea crystallizing. "By establishing new ones, by holding each other accountable. This isn't just a one-time chat, it's the foundation for ongoing communication." Clara's expression shifted, curiosity piquing as she absorbed his words. There was an opportunity brewing in this moment, one that transcended lingering resentments. "Wow," she said, the hint of intrigue coloring her voice. "So you're proposing a partnership instead of a competition? In your world?" "Exactly," Jesse affirmed, the conviction bolstering his resolve. "If we can face truths we've long avoided, then why not take this challenge into a collaborative effort? Individually, we've been battling our own shadows, but together, we can illuminate a path toward growth." Ethan nodded in agreement, his earlier bravado now tempered into something genuine as he turned to Clara. "You've always had a knack for laying it out plainly. Do you want to join us?" For a brief moment, the cafe echoed with silence, a collective breath held in anticipation. Clara regarded them, the warmth of their invitation dancing in her eyes as layers of propriety began shedding, revealing a tentative curiosity. "All right," she conceded, surprise painting her features. "But I warn you, it won't be easy. If we begin this journey, we must be prepared for authenticity." "Bring it on. We can handle the truth," Jesse replied, the latent fire in him surging again. It was a striking contrast. The old Jesse who ran from confrontation was now integrated with this bolder version, pursuing growth through understanding. They had laid the groundwork for reclamation, and now he could build upon it. Yet, as they poised to embark on this shared journey, another thought pressed in. Would they remain courageous amidst trials? Were they ready to dissect the nuances of their past to unearth honest dialogues? The ghosts of doubt still loomed large, but for the first time, Jesse felt fortified against them. "Let's start now, while this energy is alive," Jesse proposed. "We can share a moment of vulnerability." As they delved into uncertainties and aspirations, Jesse began to understand something profound. This wasn't merely an exercise of self-exploration. It was a commitment to building trust. It was about weaving together their narratives into something larger than previous enmities had ever allowed. In that moment, Jesse grasped that each stroke of vulnerability painted a picture not only of reconciliation, but of evolution. He was no longer chasing validation from others. He was nurturing the most vital connection of all, an authentic self emerging from the shadows. Over cups of coffee and candid conversations, they began fostering a bond rooted in honesty, reflection, and vulnerability. For the first time, Jesse felt the sweet taste of victory, not born from bitter rivalry, but cultivated through collaboration. As he left the cafe that evening, Jesse felt an enlightening weight lift from his heart. He had embraced his past's lessons, and, in doing so, transformed it into a powerful catalyst for future growth. Life was no longer a race to the top. It was a journey of connection, and every step forward felt like home. With newfound confidence, Jesse realized he was not just a constructor of an empire anymore. He had become an architect of relationships, stitching together the invaluable moments of life in a tapestry that glittered with hard-earned truth. Finally, he understood his journey illuminated the path not just for himself, but for those willing to join in the dance of vulnerability, reconciliation, and eventual triumph. This was the new story he had long yearned for. It was time to embrace it. And now, dear viewers, if you found Jesse's journey toward transformation and reconnection inspiring, you need to subscribe now to our channel. This is the moment to show your support by clicking the like button to fuel the algorithm. Also, please comment down below with your reactions and theories about how Jesse's journey resonates with your own experiences. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's spread the power of personal growth together.